be an opening for the railroad at some point. Because somebody's driving the train. It's not electric like what we have now.
It wasn't a train, baby.
No, I'm saying
it wasn't a train at all.
Just the
They use it. That is just a euphemism, baby.
Just a figure of speech.
I'm thinking it was like widespread.
No.
Hi everyone, I'm Dom Griffin, I'm a film critic and you're watching the Armchair Auteur. This is an ongoing video series I do where we talk about new movies, old movies, screenplay analysis, television reviews, that sort of thing. So if you like movies and you like popular culture and you like to see somebody pick those things apart, please consider subscribing. Today I'm going to be reviewing The Underground Railroad, the new Amazon Prime series from Oscar-winning writer-director Barry Jenkins based on the Colson Whitehead novel of the same name. I know that I have plenty of videos here on the channel decrying black trauma porn and stories about slavery narratives and things like that. I know I'm like the last guy you want to see talking about this stuff because I'm so outspoken about hating it. But despite not wanting to watch this show, I am very glad that I watched this show. It is not without its weaknesses, obviously, but I think it's a very, very special series. The Underground Railroad is an adaptation of a Colson Whitehead novel that could best be summed up as, what if the Underground Railroad was a real railroad? It's principally about the journey of its main character, Cora, played by Thuso Mbedu, a runaway slave being chased by slave catcher Ridgway, played by Joel Edgerton, a tireless hunter who has only failed in catching a slave one other time in his career, Cora's mother, who ran away when she was just a child. The Underground takes her on a whirlwind tour across America, from Georgia to South Carolina to North Carolina to Tennessee, all the way to Indiana. Like the source material, this is a show that is less about historical accuracy than it is taking dramatic license with the era it's depicting. Like, obviously, a show that envisions the Underground Railroad as a literal fucking series of train stations is going to be engaging in magical realism. But the show's many deviations from fact work so well because they feel accurate. These creative deviations allow for a story that wrestles with slavery's place in America's history on a variety of layers beyond many of the obvious ones we're so used to seeing in popular media on the subject. The show's plot machinations are not always the most novel, so while we may have some mild spoilers in this video, I'm not going to do much summary breakdown, because it's not the story itself that drew me in, it's the impactful way it's told. Before I get into the show proper, I want to talk a little bit about why I was so hesitant to watch the show in the first place and why it took me this long to actually review it. I've been more than a little burnt out lately. I'm not sure how much that comes across in my videos, but I've just been kind of going full throttle for a while now, and I basically only watch things, movies, TV shows, whatever, that I have to make videos about or write reviews for. I haven't done any sort of like recreational viewing in a very long time. Like, look, as a film critic, you're gonna watch a lot of stuff you don't want to watch. You're just gonna be asked to watch things that you're not in any way interested in, and then try to find something interesting to say about it to people who care about that sort of thing. For example, if you look in the description below, you can see a link to my review of Cruella that I wrote for Looper.com, which is a movie I had almost no interest in watching that I ended up watching anyway, and I didn't like it much, but like, that's what I do with my free time. I watch movies that I don't really care about. Checking my Letterboxd diary, I have not watched a movie recreationally that did not come with some kind of homework afterwards since April 3rd when I watched Tom and Jerry. Wait, no, fuck, that was for an episode of Triple Beam Streams. Okay, so before that was March 31st when I watched Knives Out, which I've seen before, but I rewatched that for fun. That was fun. And before that, the last fun watch I had was January 30th. I watched the Wendy Williams biopic. Other than that, almost everything I watch is for your consumption. I watch things to share my thoughts in it with people. So like, I'm a little bit tired. So you can imagine with my general disposition and feelings of burnout why I was not hype to watch 10 hours of a slave narrative for any reason. So this past weekend I set aside some days where I didn't have to make any kind of content and I could just kind of relax, I guess. And then my plan was to get back on the horse. I would binge The Underground Railroad, crank out a video about it for you guys, and move on to something else. But then I watched like the first 20 minutes of the pilot and I realized I could not do that. If you are going to watch The Underground Railroad, I strongly implore you to not binge this show. Watch it, definitely, it's a good show, you should check it out. Spoiler alert, I liked it. But do not binge it. Do not force yourself to watch it in a day or even 2 days. This is a show you should really take your time with. I split the entire 10 episodes between 2 full days, and even that I think was too fast. Like, I think I took so long to actually make this video for you guys because afterwards I didn't really allow myself the right amount of time to process everything that I watched. So Dom did that, so hopefully you won't have to go through that. Now why I did choose to watch the show is for a very simple reason. It's the new Barry Jenkins joint. And we love Barry Jenkins. I've been down with Barry since I first saw Medicine for Melancholy all the way back in like 2008. I was even more on Team Bear Bear with Moonlight, obviously, but I think with Beale Street, he absolutely solidified his standing for me as one of our most important voices. It also helps that we're both total marks for Wong Kar-wai.
貪生夢搞嘅，喂，你知唔知政府幫人嘥幾多心機啊？
跟這個鳳梨罐頭沒有什麼分別。
This show could only work with Barry and the team he put together behind it because it needed someone with the necessary amount of tenderness and passion to offset how traumatic and tiresome the imagery from this little subgenre has become. There's a number of changes that Barry and the writers made to the source material in adapting it to the screen that I think kind of highlight why he's the right person to tell this story. I'll quickly outline the three best ones. One, in the first episode, there's a scene where a runaway slave is captured, tortured, and killed. In the book, this process is drawn out over the course of 3 days and is considerably more involved, including the casual stinger that he had his mouth sewn shut with his own severed penis inside of it. But for the show, his being burned alive is shown from his own perspective, and you actually hear his dying words, placing the viewer into more of a position to see this untimely end as more than another piece of painful spectacle involving black bodies, implied scare quotes heavily intended. The show doesn't shy away from body horror and depicting graphic transgressions, but it's just as likely to sit patiently on a character's face as they're told off-screen horrors, leaving it to the mind's eye to sketch out and focus on the reaction or spiteful lack thereof. 2, the show gives a lot more time to fleshing out Ridgway, the show's primary antagonist, and his history. Normally, I'd say a show about slavery spending even more time with its main white cast member would be questionable at best, but the story they choose to tell with Ridgway's past, of this silly child who can't grasp the concept of empathy, being endlessly jealous at his blacksmith father's relationship with local freemen, is so compelling and adds color to the rest of the series. It's a reminder that while a lot of racism is learned from trash parents, hate truly boils down to the inability to care for other people.
Why shouldn't they be in chains?
You must try to recognize yourself in every living thing. You must look into every man, and search for yourself there.
And 3, Fanny Briggs. I don't want to ruin little Fanny Briggs' story or how this show's whole cloth creation tethers back to another of Whitehead's novels, because Chapter 7, Fanny Briggs, is the shortest episode of the season and arguably my favorite. It's exactly the kind of shining light a show with this much darkness absolutely needs, and it's proof enough on its own that Barry was the right one for the job.
Yeah, we closed that station.
Yeah. Y'all did.
I like the cut of your jib, Fanny Briggs.
I die for Fanny Briggs. But I do want to get some actual criticisms of the show out of the way, so I'm just going to kind of rip that band-aid off right now. Every single episode of the show ends with this sort of blast of like modern music, like these anachronistic song choices that are kind of meant to, I guess, I don't know, shock the viewer into the fact that they're in the credits now, but like every single one of these song choices really takes me out in a really bad way. Without spoiling much, there's an episode that ends with Childish Gambino's This Is America, and yes, it is exactly as tone-deaf and stupid as that sounds to me speaking it aloud. I give the show credit for not incorporating these needle drops into the main text of the show, like WGN's Underground, a show that expects you not to chuckle at hearing tracks from Yeezus scoring slaves running through the woods. But I've got to ding the show for this creative choice nonetheless. It's really stupid. That appears to be my only criticism. Look, I'm sure there's other things I didn't like about the show, like probably, but I can't think of any right now, and I didn't write any down, and honestly, I'm not going to sit and like shoehorn in nitpicks for you guys. Like, I'm not going to pretend to find something I hated. Like, if I really think about something in the edit later, I'll shoehorn in a joke here and cut away to something.
Let me guess. No niggas allowed of this here.
No, sir, I don't give a damn who you are, as long as you're spending.
Capitalism!
And if I didn't do that, you can look in the comments below and maybe I'll think of something later and add it there. But for the most part, I just really like this show. But everything else about the show works for me. For the simple reason that Jenkins and the creative team behind the show, largely comprised of collaborators he's been working with for years, like cinematographer James Laxton, editor Joy McMillan, and composer Nick Britell, used the source material to do more than regurgitate the same tired slave story narratives. Its sweeping scope and twisted road trip movie structure allows each stop on the quest to function like its own little film. South Carolina provides the neoliberal impression of progress, a place Cora may seem more comfortable in on the surface, but it's a hollow facade masquerading a more idiosyncratic flavor of oppression.
The practical betterment for the practical betterment of Negro life! Of Negro life!
One that provides multiple points of commentary on the very making of slave narratives in modern popular culture.
I want you to work on channeling that African spirit, you see? Remember that. Authenticity is our watchword, yes? All these people that come here, they think they know what this life was like, but we gotta show them what it was really like, yes? For us, by us, huh? FUBU, huh? Look here. You see? Let it flow. And if you like, you don't have to if you don't feel comfortable, but you could add some dialogue, you know, like, stupid animal! Of course.
That's mighty impressive. Oh, you've done this before, I take it.
Well, that was a lifetime ago.
But when they get to North Carolina, things are just upfront awful. A fictional version of the state where being black has been outlawed entirely, slave and free men alike. A mini capsule commenting on the Holocaust beyond chattel slavery. Even in her penultimate destination of Indiana, with its all-black vineyard and seeming oasis from the horrors of the time, proves to be a disquieting distillation of what the show is grappling with. The utter inescapability of this oppressive system. That even a tenuous detente like the one Mr. Valentine has built here relies on the corporation of the very people this place was built as shelter from. The two-parter set on Valentine Farm houses some of my favorite stuff in the whole show. Like, who the fuck else can make an extended sequence about a corn shucking competition and make me tear up? What other filmmaker could get away with this extended debate on the future of black independence? A scene that is far talkier and monologue-y than the show at its best, but one that is nonetheless utterly gripping and captivating, highlighting the difference between Mr. Valentine's ideology as a man who wants to take his people out west for new opportunities, and Mingo, a man who bought his family out of slavery and just wants to work with these white devils to maintain some semblance of peace while they can, knowing out west isn't going to be any different than where they are now.
Plenty of land out there, you know as well as I. More land than a man can dream of out there.
Yes, but for who? Dreams for who?
In a show with a humongous cast and several side characters, each of whom feel more well-drawn and compelling than the protagonists of other shows on TV, Mingo, played by Chikudi Uji, winds up being one of my faves to watch, a character whose beliefs I strongly disagree with, but whose presence and perspective are so moving.
Wouldn't hurt to not parade around how as good as white man you are every chance you get.
But I am, Peyton. But I am.
But that's what makes this show special. It isn't just about the simple binary of slave and master, of captivity versus freedom, but it engages with a variety of perspectives on the black experience in a way that resonates to the current day without awkwardly trying at relevance. What other show could make a character like Homer work? Homer, the little black boy played by Chase W. Dillon, who serves as Ridgway's trusty, loquacious, and horrifying partner?
Homer! Manifest destiny.
Manifest destiny. Taking what is rightfully yours, your property, whatever you deem it to be, sir.
At first, I thought this pairing would just be weird and cloying, but I came to find Homer one of the most interesting new characters I've seen on TV since, I don't know, Snoop from The Wire?
How my head look, Mike?
But there's just so many great performances, so many killer compositions in the score, so many haunting and lyrical images that linger and follow you around after having consumed them that, if I don't watch myself, we could literally be here all day talking about incredible moments from the show. And as I said before, I have such a hard time making reviews of things I genuinely love and like. There's only but so many positive adjectives in the world. So instead of repeating the same glowing phrases a million reviews have run into the ground by now, I just want to highlight a bunch of my favorite moments, hopefully without spoiling too much of the show, as my last effort to get you to watch The Underground Railroad. All of Barry Jenkins' films, in some way, grapple with his relationship with his mother, perhaps none more than Moonlight, but I like the way the show takes its time reckoning with Cora's relationship with her mother Mabel, played by Sheila Atim, who perhaps outside of Mbedu's turn as Cora, delivers the finest work in the entire series in her finale showcase. It feels like Barry continuing to iterate on those themes that are very personal to him, but through a larger narrative that will speak to anyone who was ever abandoned as a child. I love that the show takes the time in its premiere to show us the members of Cora's plantation enjoying themselves before digging into the reality of the situation. Getting even a fleeting glimpse of this reverie makes the snap back to business as usual so much more cutting to behold. But I also love that in the later episodes, when Cora is trying to adapt to the vineyard and the idea that she could ever truly feel at rest, could ever truly feel safe, she sees that even this little Eden has to contend with certain difficult truths. Like when Royal, played by William Jackson Harper, one of Cora's love interests who was born free, casually muses on how everyone on the farm has enough money to go free more slaves themselves.
Hell, I'd just as soon write down a set of your papers myself.
Why ain't y'all then?
Why ain't we what?
Bitch, let them niggas out then.
I also can't get over the sound design of this show, and the way audio plays a part in painting these portraits, particularly in this scene. But two of the best things in the show, strangely enough, come back to Joel Edgerton's turn as Ridgway, one of the better villains I've seen on screen in quite some time. First, there's the devastating realization in episode 4 that so many elements of Edgerton's performance are in fact deliberate impressions of Peter Mullen, who plays Ridgway's father. It's the stunning reveal that this hideous man we have feared the whole time is little more than an oversized child, mimicking the father he can never live up to, borrowing his tics and timber because he can't understand his worldview, hating the man he was but walking around talking like him anyway.
I was no good. Why'd you steal my fucking voice?
And the scene that really shook me, the way their schism is initially framed, as young Ridgway turns on Annie, a woman who works for his father, and begins to spew the same hateful rhetoric he's drawn to from the other slave catchers he calls his colleagues. Watching Charity Jordan's face try to stomach his verbal abuse before turning to Mullen's face, a son seeing in real time his father coming to terms with the monster he's bred, the evil he's failed to prevent, absolutely kills me.
I wish I had done more. Shape the boy into the man.
But really that scene works so well because of how the entire show is composed. Barry Jenkins is a filmmaker who loves to look his characters in the eye, who loves to move his camera around a scene as much as he can without cutting, creating such an intimacy between the story and the viewer as to impose the sort of empathy Ridgway's father failed to instill in him. Unlike so many modern pieces of pop culture that think they're going to change hearts and minds by gussying up images of black pain with aesthetics, the Underground Railroad, like Jenkins' best films, takes the time and puts in the work to genuinely foster a connection that affects the viewer, that really stays with them beyond the cursory impulse to go, wow, that's fucked up. It doesn't take the easy way out. And honestly, if you're gonna watch the show, you shouldn't either. The Underground Railroad is a show that rewards patience and rewards taking the time to digest each of its chapters. Watch an episode, wait a couple of days. Watch an episode, wait a whole week. Watch the show at a more deliberate pace, because that's the kind of pace it was made at. This isn't your typical disposable, bingeable content or, prestige TV that's reheating the same stuff from The Sopranos and Mad Men over and over again. Like, this really does feel like serialized television made with the focus and the heart and the art of actual movies, and it's the sort of thing I'd like to see more of from original content from streamers. I'd like to see filmmakers get to tell longer form stories without having to contort themselves to the weird modern TV archetype of making gifable, live tweetable shows and stuff. Like, this feels like its own thing, and it feels like something we need a lot more of. I really liked it. So those are my thoughts on the Underground Railroad. Please watch the show. Please take your time watching the show. If you have seen it and you have any thoughts, you want to share them with me, do so in the comments below. I like talking to you guys a lot. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you have not subscribed, subscribe, hit the little bell notification thingy so you get notified anytime I put out a new video. That would be awesome for me and for you, I think. And yeah, thank you guys again for watching. Hope everyone's staying safe, being good to yourselves and each other, wearing your masks, getting vaccinated, doing all that good stuff. I will see you all in the next video. Bye.